Only if this story truly resonates with you. Please hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment with your city or country and your local time. My name is Samantha. I am 30, and tonight changed everything in my family forever. I had spent the morning baking a special cake for Daniel, my husband, celebrating the big contract he had just closed. I walked into his office smiling, carrying the cake carefully in both hands, thinking of how proud I was of him. But then I saw him through the large glass window, Daniel's arm around Catherine, his laughter soft and intimate, the world they shared, a place I once thought was ours. I froze, my chest tight, my lips parted slightly, unable to process the scene. "Daniel, what is this?" I whispered, my voice trembling just enough to betray my shock. He turned slightly, didn't meet my eyes, and said nothing. I left the cake on his desk, my hands still shaking, and walked away silently, feeling every step like a mile. Back in the hallway, I muttered under my breath, "This cannot be real," but every fiber of my body knew it was. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, laptop open, heart pounding, thinking about the quiet messages and patterns I had noticed before but ignored. "Olivia," I typed to my best friend in a desperate text, "you have to tell me I am not imagining this." Her reply came moments later, simple and steady. "You are not imagining it. Keep calm. You will see clearly soon." I leaned back in my chair, the light of the laptop casting a soft glow on my face, thinking about every subtle lie, every secret act, and realizing that there was a truth no one in my family had suspected, a truth I had to uncover before I could take control. And as I stared at the blinking cursor on the screen, I knew that what I was about to discover would change everything, my trust, my marriage, and the life I thought I knew, and it was all hidden, waiting silently for me to reveal it. As I sat alone in my apartment that night, the glow of the laptop illuminating my face, my mind wandered back to my childhood, to the kitchen table where my parents, Richard and Linda, would sit with my older brother, Daniel Jr. While I waited quietly for attention that rarely came, "Emily, set the table," my mother would say, barely looking up from her coffee, while my father nodded at my brother's accomplishments, praising him for grades in sports, leaving me to memorize lessons in patience and invisibility. Even the smallest achievements of mine, a good grade, a ribbon from a school competition, were greeted with polite nods at best, and sometimes a dismissive glance at Daniel Jr. "You should try harder, Emily," my father would comment, as if my efforts were meaningless. Those early experiences taught me how to swallow my disappointment and maintain a composed exterior, but tonight, standing outside Daniel's office, I could feel that familiar ache creeping back. The unfairness of my past mirrored what I had just witnessed, and it made the betrayal even sharper, like a wound reopening. I remembered the wooden floorboards of my childhood home, the sound of my small feet pacing as I argued for a word of recognition, and I realized how long I had been conditioned to hold back, to hide my reactions, until the right moment. "Samantha, you do not deserve this." Olivia's message blinked on my screen, grounding me, her words carrying the weight of loyalty and understanding. I traced the edge of the laptop with my fingers, thinking about how these patterns of favoritism and disregard had shaped me, and yet also how they had prepared me to recognize deception and gather evidence calmly. The betrayal I faced tonight was only the tip of a much larger awareness forming inside me, and as I leaned back, exhaling slowly, a quiet determination began to settle, in a sense that I was ready to reclaim control and face what had been hidden for too long. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the blinds, casting long stripes across the hardwood floor as I sat at my desk, coffee steaming beside my laptop. For the first time, I did not feel the need to shrink back or apologize for noticing the truth. I clicked open the spreadsheet, tracing messages and transactions, realizing that my careful observations had revealed a pattern no one else had seen. "Samantha, are you really going to do this?" Olivia's voice came softly through the phone speaker, concern mixed with encouragement, and I nodded, though she could not see me. Yes, it is time to take control. Even the smallest details mattered now, the timestamps, the recurring meetings, and the hidden emails. Each element built a case stronger than any argument my husband or Catherine could offer. My sister-in-law, Jessica, called with a casual tone that carried a subtle judgment. "I do not know why you are so worked up over this. Maybe you are imagining things." But I held the phone calmly, listening, acknowledging the tension she tried to inject, and replied evenly, "I am seeing the facts clearly, and I will act accordingly." Every call, every note, every action I had taken the night before started to show its impact, a quiet shift in awareness that gave me a foothold where I had once felt powerless. The familiar fear and self-doubt that had followed me since childhood no longer dictated my responses. Instead, I felt a growing sense of agency, the kind that came from understanding patterns, observing truth, and preparing carefully. I glanced at the envelope I had prepared, placed neatly beside my laptop, a symbol of the leverage and clarity I now held, and I knew that once I chose to move forward, nothing would be the same. There was a tension in the air, a quiet hum of anticipation, as if the entire family's dynamics were poised on a knife edge, ready to tilt dramatically in the moments to come, and I could feel, deep in my bones, that the first real revelation of the truth was imminent. By mid-morning, I realized the full scale of the betrayal that had been unfolding right under my nose for months. I sifted through emails and digital calendars, finding subtle hints that Daniel and Catherine had been coordinating behind my back, their meetings carefully disguised as work events. "Samantha, you do not need to worry about this. It is all business," Daniel had assured me repeatedly, his voice steady, but the patterns on the screen told a different story. My sister-in-law Jessica's texts, which had seemed casual and innocuous before, now read like confirmations of a web of lies. "They always keep you out of the loop, don't stress," she wrote, and I could feel the manipulation threading through my family circle. I leaned back in my chair, hands pressed lightly over my eyes, trying to steady my breath as I realized how easily their deception had been accepted by everyone around us, how my intuition had been dismissed as overthinking. Each email, each calendar entry, each friendly message from Daniel that masked the truth felt like another layer of the facade falling away. I called Olivia, my voice tight with restrained fury. "I cannot believe everyone believed him, that no one noticed." And she replied calmly, "That is why you stayed quiet. Now you see clearly, and you can act." The afternoon sun cast long shadows across my apartment as I reviewed every detail again, the pattern undeniable. And I felt the shock of realization hit fully. The network of lies had extended farther than I had imagined, touching colleagues, friends, and even family members. I closed the laptop briefly, staring at the envelope I had prepared, my hands shaking slightly, knowing that once I revealed what I had uncovered, the entire structure of relationships around me would collapse. A single message blinked on the screen from Catherine, innocuous at first glance, but I knew its implications instantly, and my stomach tightened as I understood that the moment of truth was imminent, and nothing in the room, in the office, or in their carefully constructed world would ever look the same again. After the full scale of the deception hit me, I spent hours trying to make sense of every thread, every whisper, every message that had been overlooked or dismissed. I called Daniel repeatedly, my voice calm but firm. "We need to discuss these accounts immediately." But he either ignored the calls or responded with vague assurances that did nothing to clarify the situation. I sent carefully worded emails to the company administrators, detailing discrepancies in transactions and unexplained authorizations, and even followed up with handwritten letters to Catherine's office, hoping for a rational conversation. Yet each message returned only silence or perfunctory replies that left me more unsettled. Text messages from colleagues I trusted revealed that Daniel had provided partial truths, narratives that painted me as paranoid or overly sensitive, each one another subtle attempt to isolate me from allies who might have supported my claims. "Samantha, I do not understand why this is happening," Olivia said softly over the phone, her tone empathetic yet frustrated, and I pressed the receiver to my shoulder, closing my eyes and imagining how easily the world had accepted lies over my truth. Even messages from my parents, Richard and Linda, were cautious and distant, offering gentle concern but no direct intervention, leaving me to face the evidence alone. Each failed attempt to restore transparency, each ignored call and misdirected email, compounded the humiliation, systemically demonstrating how the web of manipulation had infiltrated both personal and professional spaces. I stared at the stacks of unopened envelopes and digital printouts spread across my dining table, the glow of my laptop illuminating the careful notes I had compiled, and I realized that despite the thoroughness of my efforts, The isolation was complete. The room felt colder, emptier, the weight of betrayal settling over me like a physical presence, and for the first time in days, I let myself simply sit and acknowledge the profound solitude that had emerged as a direct consequence of uncovering the truth. The room was quiet. The soft hum of the refrigerator, the only sound accompanying my thoughts as I sank into the chair by the window. The weight of isolation pressed down on me, heavier than the cold air drifting through the slightly cracked window, and I realized how completely alone I had become. The betrayal had not only shattered my trust, but also left a void where connection should have been. I dialed my parents' number, my fingers trembling, and when they answered, I could hear the distance in their voices, concern tempered with helplessness. "Samantha, we are here if you need to talk," my mother said softly, and I nodded even though she could not see me. "I know, but I need to face this myself." The envelopes of evidence sat neatly on the desk, each one a reminder of what had been lost and the truths I had uncovered, and yet the sight of them also sparked a faint glimmer of clarity. I remembered quiet moments with Olivia, her voice calm over the phone. "You are stronger than you think, Samantha. You will find your way." The memory anchored me, giving a small but steady pulse of resolve through the numbness, and for the first time, I acknowledged the depth of my loss, the absence of trust, the solitude of deception, the disintegration of what I had once considered a safe world. I let myself feel the pain fully, accepting that it was part of the process, and as the evening sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, soft shadows across the apartment, I recognized that this moment of profound emptiness was also the threshold for change. A quiet awareness began to emerge, a recognition that despite the loneliness and the betrayal, the power to reclaim my life, my choices, and my voice lay in my own hands, and I felt the faint, steady pulse of determination, signaling the first step toward recovery, toward reclaiming the control and clarity that had been taken from me. The morning sunlight poured through the windows of my small apartment, illuminating stacks of documents, spreadsheets, and notes I had spent the night organizing, each one a testament to the meticulous work I was rebuilding for myself. Without waiting for anyone's approval, I reviewed the proposals for my new freelance project, adjusting budgets and timelines with precision, feeling the quiet thrill of control and independence. "Samantha, this looks incredible," my colleague Aaron said over a video call, excitement in his tone. "I had no idea you were capable of such detail and leadership." I smiled softly, a subtle warmth in my chest. "It is all about focus and clarity, Aaron. I finally have the space to apply it." Each decision I made, each line item I adjusted, reminded me that my abilities were my own, not dictated by anyone else's expectations. My phone buzzed with a message from Olivia. "You are doing it. You are showing them and yourself what you are worth." And I paused, letting her words settle, feeling a steady pulse of accomplishment rather than the anxiety I had carried before. As I prepared a presentation deck for a potential client, I realized that the credibility I was earning was entirely self-made, a direct contrast to the chaos and betrayal I had endured. The quiet satisfaction of competence replaced the lingering sting of betrayal, and for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to imagine a future shaped by my own choices, not the constraints imposed by anyone else. Looking out the window at the city skyline, I felt the subtle promise of growth and opportunity, the sense that my path was no longer controlled by the past. With each completed task and each positive note from colleagues, the tension of uncertainty eased slightly, and a small but firm sense of power began to build. The next phase of this journey was not just about professional success, but about reclaiming my identity and voice, and as I closed the laptop and sipped my coffee, I could feel the faint glimmer of the opportunities that awaited, hinting at a future where resilience, skill, and independence would finally be recognized. The office lobby was bright, with the morning sun streaming through the glass walls. As I adjusted the blazer over my shoulders, the engraved nameplate reading Samantha Harper, Lead Consultant, reflecting softly on the polished surface. Walking past the reception desk, I felt the steady confidence that had been hard-won through months of rebuilding, every step deliberate, every glance precise. "Good morning, Samantha. The board is ready for you," my assistant Lily called with a hint of admiration, and I nodded, straightening my posture. In the conference room, the team waited, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and respect, As I began presenting the project I had designed from start to finish, my voice calm but commanding, each slide a testament to my meticulous preparation. "Samantha, the analysis on client engagement is remarkable," remarked Thomas, a senior director, leaning slightly forward. "Have you considered leading the expansion team?" I allowed a small, confident smile. "I have, ectus spades to see," my words steady, conveying authority without arrogance. As I walked back to my office, the sense of ownership and recognition settled around me, subtle but undeniable, a tangible symbol of the power and credibility I had earned. Olivia sent a quick message, "You are unstoppable," and I let myself laugh softly, the warmth of her encouragement amplifying the quiet pride I felt. Glancing at the window, the city skyline stretched before me, a reminder of both the obstacles I had overcome and the opportunities still ahead, linking the present strength I had cultivated to the lessons of the past, ensuring that every decision moving forward would be guided by clarity, competence, and self-assurance. The subtle hum of the office, the steady clicking of keyboards, and the soft conversation around me anchored me in a reality that I had shaped, and I knew that the momentum I had built was only the beginning, a bridge connecting the struggles and betrayals of yesterday to the fully realized potential I now commanded. The hospital waiting room smelled faintly of antiseptic, the low hum of fluorescent lights mixing with the soft murmur of visitors and the occasional squeak of rolling carts. I sat in the corner, folder in my lap, fingers tapping lightly as I reviewed the documents and evidence that had taken weeks to gather, each sheet a quiet assertion of the power I now held. The receptionist glanced up briefly, offering a polite smile, and I nodded, my eyes scanning the room, noting the subtle interactions, the hushed conversations, the expressions of anticipation and worry, all blending into a tense background. "Samantha, are you ready?" Olivia's voice came from across the hall, calm yet alert, and I straightened my posture, inhaling slowly, steadying my heartbeat. The meeting room door opened ahead, a soft creak signaling the arrival of those I had come to confront, and I could see Daniel walking in, expression neutral, but eyes shifting subtly, as if sensing the shift in control. Catherine followed, carrying a folder, her face betraying only a hint of curiosity, and I felt the tension coil tightly, a slow, deliberate tightening that mirrored the careful planning I had executed. "Samantha," Daniel began, his voice measured, "I did not expect you here so soon." And I smiled slightly, a quiet, knowing curve of the lips. "I did not come here for expectations, Daniel. I came for clarity," my tone calm yet undeniably firm. The room seemed to pause, the subtle rhythm of footsteps, papers, and breathing marking a prelude to what was about to unfold, each glance and small gesture loaded with anticipation. I placed the folder gently on the table, making sure it was fully visible to both of them, and the air thickened as the unspoken truths hovered between us, ready to be revealed. My pulse steadied, my gaze unwavering, and I could sense the exact moment just before the revelation when control had shifted quietly, and the silence itself was charged with the impending truth that would change everything. The air in the room was taut, almost tangible, as I slid the folder across the table, its contents fully visible to Daniel and Catherine, my gaze steady and unwavering. "Everything you thought was hidden is here," I said softly, each word deliberate, carrying the weight of weeks of investigation and preparation. Daniel looked down, swallowing, his usual calm replaced by a subtle tension. "Samantha, I did not expect this," and I met his eyes evenly. "Expectations are irrelevant. Facts are." Catherine's hand trembled slightly as she glanced at the documents, her carefully composed expression faltering for the first time. I observed the minute shift in their postures, the sudden awareness that the balance of power had quietly shifted. "You have meticulously gathered all of this?" Daniel asked, voice low and credulous, and I nodded. "Yes, every action, every meeting, every hidden message has been accounted for. I see clearly, and now you cannot hide anything." The room held a fragile silence, the kind that presses against the ribs, every breath deliberate, every movement magnified. I could feel the subtle recognition from them both that Samantha was no longer the quiet, unnoticed figure who once deferred to everyone else. My calm control contrasted with their rising unease, a tension that seemed to ripple outward and touch every corner of the space. "You have changed," Catherine whispered, almost to herself, and I allowed a small, measured smile. "I have. And this is what it looks like to reclaim your life." Daniel exhaled slowly, an almost imperceptible admission passing between them that the dynamic had irrevocably altered. The weight of truth hung in the air, and as I collected my papers, carefully closing the folder, a silent understanding settled. The equilibrium had shifted, and the impact of this revelation would echo far beyond this room, leaving them stunned, exposed, and unprepared for the consequences that were only beginning to unfold. The aftermath of the revelation hung heavy in the air as I sat quietly in the living room. My parents, Richard and Linda, entered, their expressions a mix of shock and hesitant concern. "Samantha, we did not realize. We had no idea," my father admitted, voice low. And I nodded, my tone calm but firm. "It was not visible because I had to collect it carefully. Now you see the full picture." Daniel avoided my gaze, shifting uncomfortably, while Catherine's hands fiddled with the edge of her folder, her composure faltering. "You have thought this through, every detail," Daniel said cautiously, the edge of respect creeping into his voice, and I allowed a small nod. "I have. I know exactly what has happened, and I will not allow it to continue." Olivia, who had been on the call earlier, offered a quiet affirmation. "You are setting the boundaries, Samantha. You are in control." I looked around the room, seeing the subtle recognition in everyone's eyes that the balance had changed, and I felt the quiet strength in asserting my limits without shouting or dramatics. "From now on," I continued, "the rules have changed. This is my life, my decisions, and my boundaries. I expect them to be respected." A tense silence followed, thick but contained, as each person processed the reality that I was no longer passive, that I had not only uncovered the truth, but had taken the steps to protect myself. Yet despite the calm authority, the emotions were far from settled. Daniel and Catherine were visibly stunned, my parents cautious, and the quiet tension hinted at unresolved feelings and upcoming challenges. I allowed myself a measured exhale, acknowledging the shift of power and the clarity I had gained, but also understanding that the journey toward complete resolution, trust, and emotional closure had only just begun, leaving a lingering sense that more discoveries and decisions lay ahead. The morning light filtered softly through the blinds, illuminating my apartment with a gentle glow that contrasted with the turbulence of the past weeks. Life had settled into a quiet rhythm, still imperfect but calmer, and I felt the clarity of my own space, the freedom to make decisions for myself, and the calm understanding that my value was not defined by anyone else. As I poured coffee into a delicate ceramic mug, I reflected on the lessons learned, the importance of setting boundaries, trusting my instincts, and protecting my emotional and financial well-being. These experiences had been painful, yet they had instilled resilience and self-awareness, teaching me that healing begins with recognition and acceptance, and that independence is not just a goal but a necessity for preserving dignity. I want you, watching this, to know that it is possible to reclaim your life even after betrayal and disappointment, to honor your intuition, and to stand firm in your choices without apology. When life challenges your trust, take time to observe, gather clarity, and act with intention, knowing that your identity and self-respect are non-negotiable. To anyone feeling isolated or uncertain, know that your path toward recovery is valid, and small steps of empowerment build lasting strength. I am grateful for those who offered support, even quietly, for the friends who listened, and for the quiet moments that reminded me of my inner fortitude. Thank you for being here and sharing this journey. It makes the experience feel less lonely and more understood. Trust in your intuition, respect your own needs, and let your life be guided by the quiet power within you. As I look at the small potted plant on my windowsill, new leaves stretching toward the sunlight, I see a symbol of growth and renewal, and it reminds me that each day holds the opportunity to flourish. My name is Samantha. I am 30, and the lesson I want to share with you is simple. Your self-respect is the compass that guides every decision. In the coming episodes, you will witness the continuation of resilience, new challenges, and the quiet triumphs that build a life of autonomy and confidence, showing that even after deep betrayal, the future can hold clarity, empowerment, and hope.